If John, Colette and Son, you can come and join me on stage. However, but what you recognise is I've only called out 3 names, and there's more than 3 chairs on the stage too. So I'm going to kind of put it out there, and you look in a nice possible way. You don't have to if you don't want to. No, John, no, John, you do. Is if there's anyone out there who is in and I don't mean a leadership role, I mean in the fire and rescue service role, where leadership isn't just about a chief officer in the nicest possible way. It's about leading at all levels. If you're brave enough to come up, and we'll talk about courage in a second, if you're brave enough to come up onto the stage and offer a view, I want to ask you some questions. So let me put it out there, and if you feel as though you've got a view and you want to express it, come and join me on stage. There is one more seat there. Hey, that's not for me, by the way, because I'm going to probably stand. You going to come up, yeah? Right, perfect. Look, that, in the nicest possible way, this is not scripted, right? This isn't planned. So the people who've come up and sat up here probably just want to offer a view and a perspective, and I think that's really, really important. Hey, now there's your panel. So look, I think you should give them a big round of applause in the first instance. And equally note that we've only got a relatively short time scale to pose some questions. But I do want to get that rich picture from everyone on the panel now. So, first question really is around the title, I suppose. I am going to start with you, John, because it's your conference, and in the nicest possible way, I know I can pick on you a little bit.
Exactly the type of culture we're trying to encourage, Phil. So all good. Fire away.
I'm going to come back to that question in a second. But it is about building trust, right? And how do you build trust within your organisation?
Well, that is the question, because as many as you all know, the London Fire Brigade itself has been on quite a journey over the last sort of five to 6 years. Listening actually to the contributions of people on stage so far, actually the last contribution really did make me think, because essentially the entire system needs turning on its head. And that is quite something in terms of how we actually continue to drive forward in terms of the improvement, not just of the London Fire Brigade, but the sector more broadly. But in terms of some simple things, I think when it comes to trust, particularly if you're the London Fire Commissioner or you're in a leadership position, you really do have to walk the walk. Because to be honest, I can sit here and I can say all of the buzzwords, I can produce fantastic strategies. We've got lovely posters on fire stations all across London now, all of which have been given the thumbs up from the HMI and everyone else. But it doesn't mean a jot. It doesn't mean a jot if there are people on our fire stations, in our control room, in FRS professional teams who don't genuinely feel that this is an organisation for them, or that they can fully contribute to make the London Fire Brigade the organisation that it needs to become. So fundamentally, it has to go beyond words, it has to go beyond nice posters, it has to go beyond strategies, and senior leaders really do have to walk the walk. The amount of times I have to say to people that, it's okay to make a mistake. There's no way we're going to improve as an organisation if people haven't got courage to take risks, to do things that sometimes would be different to what we've been used to over the course of the last 25 to 30 years. Because when you look at the complexity of operating particularly in a global city like London, carry on doing things the way that we've done them for the last 20 or 30 years is just not going to cut the mustard. So that actually means we've got to do things differently. It means we do have to think differently in terms of how we deliver our services, and that's going to require courage. And we're going to make a lot of mistakes. I'm going to make a lot of mistakes every single day that I'm in this very privileged position, and that's okay. And there is definitely something about showing that vulnerability and being perfectly okay with that, because we are all human beings. And I think when it comes to talking about culture, when it comes to talking about trust, sometimes we can overcomplicate it. We employ nearly 6,000 people, and they come to work with their strengths and their weaknesses. My starting position is always that I look for the positive, because I do genuinely think the vast, vast majority of people who come to work in the Fire Brigade more broadly, but London Fire Brigade specifically, are here for all the right reasons. And as long as we're very, very clear about what the expectations are of the organisations, what the values are of the organisation, what it means to wear the uniform or work as part of the organisation, then when people cross the line, there is no room for manoeuvre, there is no excuse, and we have to be absolutely crystal clear about that. But one of the things we've had to stop doing, that we probably have been guilty of in the past, is pivoting the organisation to the 3 or 4% of the organisation who don't share the values. Because actually that's not the experience that we see. You know, we've heard, you know, really personal testimony today of the fantastic people who work in fire and rescue services up and down the country. And we've got to make sure that we continue to push that to the fore, that people can see that if you've got the talent, if you've got the attributes that we're looking for, that this is a career for you and you can flourish. And then people need to see that that talent flourishes, because that's really, really important as well. You know, there's no good playing lip service to this stuff because it just doesn't fly. You know, one of the things I've been trying to do since I've taken over as commissioner is go to fire stations at least once a week. So normally on a Monday, I'll try and squeeze in 2 or 3 visits to a fire station. And there's no shortage of people giving me honest feedback there in terms of the organisation that we are, where we're continuing to get things wrong. But that's all good, because normally what tends to happen is there's an apology, and then they'll give it to me with both barrels. And I always say, actually, no need for the apology. As long as the feedback comes back, you know, in a professional and courteous manner, that's what we need, because we will continue to make mistakes. There will be things that we do that not everyone will agree with, and that's okay. And the communication is absolutely critical, but the more we do that, and the more we see leaders be quite open and vulnerable to proper feedback, yes, check and challenge, and then be quite vulnerable in that space, then that's how you really build the trust, that the words that we talk about, the strategies that we put in place, the values that sit on those posters go far beyond that. It is about genuinely creating an environment that then enables the London Fire Brigade, in my particular case, but you could apply it to any organisation, to be the world-class 21st century organisation that it should be. But it's hard graft. You know, I often say that leadership is a contact sport. You can't do it through a Teams screen. Sometimes you have to have very, very difficult conversations, but you have to have the conversation. You know, where we fell foul as an organisation over many, many years is we just simply didn't have a difficult conversation, and you have to start at that point, because 9 times out of 10, if you do that, you don't then see the most egregious examples of cultural failings in an organisation that were presented to us in all of its glory in 2022, and I'll probably leave it there. Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, Jonathan. I'm going to come back to Shabazz and David in a second about what your expectations of leaders in the fire and rescue services are, and actually, you know, and that's recognising your leadership roles too. But let me just give you a little bit of time to think about that while I just move on to Colette ever so quickly. And you know, when Jonathan has talked, I suppose about that development of trust within an organisation, I suppose equally important from a fire and rescue service point of view and the role that we fulfil for our communities. Colette, I'm really interested in your view around how do you build a trust within communities too.
Hi, so I think I've met most people in the room, but those I haven't met, my name's Colette Black. I'm the Director of People Services for Essex County Fire and Rescue Service, and recently taken on the NFCC Lead Officer role for people. And for us, building trust in communities comes from building trust within the workforce, and of course that's the place to start. So I agree with all that Jonathan has said, but I would add that I think it takes a deliberate and conscientious effort with a deliberate strategy sitting underneath it in order to achieve the walking the walk that Jonathan describes, and I know you have that in LFB. The 3 things that I always refer back to are the clarity of vision, whether that's for your community or for your workforce, your communication strategy for sharing that vision and for bringing people along with you, and then the reward and recognition for all of the times that people get that right and that they do operate as role models. As Jonathan says, we have a tendency to inadvertently make role models of the small percentage of people who sometimes don't get it quite right, rather than focusing on all of those that do and sharing their stories and celebrating those individuals.
Thanks, Colette. I'm going to go to Shabazz first, and then if you move the mic, John, to David. So I suppose the question I pose to you is, what do you want from your leaders, your principal team, in regards to how you would want them to build that trust within the organisation, and how do you distill that down into your own specific roles, and how do you lead within your kind of your network, within your group, on your station, or within your function?
Hello, everybody. I'd answer that with the experience that I've had up to this point of how trust has been built within my own service. It's been coming away from those traditional models of having an EDI lead, an EDI department. Ownership has been given to senior leaders, area managers, group managers, and specifically starting from the chief. He's created a situation where you have every protected characteristics has an employee voice group, LGBTQ+, race and religion, disabilities, etc. And they, in themselves, have created safe spaces. So they meet once every 8 weeks, and within those spaces, these senior leaders that can affect change get to hear firsthand accounts of real experiences that people are having, whether negative and positive. But there's no taboos. Everyone within those in those meetings feels as though they can say anything, and they will have their voices heard, and also that some sort of action will be taken, and it's been reflected in our HMI recent inspections, where for culture we were deemed outstanding in Lancs. So it was verified through that as well, through the evidence that they saw when they inspected us. So for me, trust is about being able to speak truth to power without any backlash or consequences, but also know that that there will be some sort of positive change that will take place through that. And for me, that mechanism, and I'm sure that's not the only model that's out there that works, but for me, that breakup of having it where you have just a department isolated, you have a senior lead isolated, the ownership is placed on across the board throughout senior management, but then they're accountable to the chief, because then he will sit once every 8 weeks or whatever period, because I don't get to see that aspect of things often, but he will be asking those questions. What is your list of issues from this group of the employees? What have you done about them? What's been the outcome, etc., etc. And then, yes, the whole organisation becomes accountable for those issues that are being raised, whether they are negative or whether they are positive.
Thank you, Shabazz. David, and then I'm going to come back to you, Nick, around how do you kind of take some of that really good learning and share that. So, David, your views on what you expect of your leaders, but also how you utilise your skills within your network to instil those values across the whole of the organisation.
Hello everyone, I'm Dave Waters, I'm from Dorset and Wiltshire Fire and Rescue, so I suppose I'm not going to reinvent the wheel and say anything particularly unique in this space. I suppose the environment we're in, I'm in a coastal, rural fire service. I was formerly in the LFB, formerly in Hertfordshire before that, so seeing the challenges that we have, predominantly on-call service, under a lot of financial pressure as everybody is, there is a lot of stress and strain on amongst the whole service, the whole leadership gambit, thinking about everyone being an individual leader. And from my point of view, and I'm led every day, not just by my chief officer, but the people around me, I think we just expect, and I expect, good, honest leadership. And what does that good, honest leadership mean? It means that we are transparent, we're accountable, people understand the challenges and the issues that we're working with, and we need to be honest and really listen to our people and really be listened to and heard and recognised in those areas, so people have that psychological safety, that space to challenge seniority, to tell you what the issues are, to tell you what the problems are, and I guess as a leader, it's absolutely incumbent on me to role model that myself. So where I have those opportunities to challenge my colleagues, I've got to do that, and I've got to do that in a public space and in a private space where appropriate, but absolutely have myself held to account and hold everybody else to account equally on behalf of the staff themselves. I suppose and I'm very new to this role, so I'm going to speak from some naivety as well in this area, but what I also think is that in certain areas we need to maintain place so if you're in a strategic forum, you should maintain that place in a strategic forum and try and withhold yourself from becoming tactical. We have expert tacticians, and what we tend to do as senior leaders is try and tell people how they're going to solve the problems, and we forget that our place is to describe what the issue is we're trying to solve, and not encroach and disempower those people whose absolute expertise are in that tactical field and that operational field to solving the issues for us. And I think what I've seen in my limited time is we're very, very quick to try and solve the issue. We want to solutionise, if that's such a word, try and solve those problems. And from my point of view, that is where disempowerment comes. And that is where we start losing our colleagues and our staff members, when we are actually over-directing what needs to be done or how we think it should be done. And we need to empower our colleagues to ensure that they own and come up with absolutely the right solutions for themselves.
Thanks, David. And look, I often say that you can pretty much judge your fire and rescue service from probably the first 10 minutes when you walk into a building, to be perfectly honest with you. Because, but trying to kind of distill down what culture looks like and what those examples that have been shared look like into something which is really tangible is quite difficult. So, Nikki, in that role that you're fulfilling, which is in part and parcel of the implementation team, you go out, you see stuff that works. How do you ensure that the information that you gather and the what works is shared more broadly?
Well, certainly, I look after the South East, and I'm one of a team of 8. We look after you across the country and the devolved nations. What we do is listen to you. I believe people by people, and the more that we're in your services helping you and working and listening and making the connection. One thing I have learned is an awful lot about NFCC products, tools, resources, and they're not just for select people, they're for everyone in this room to use in different ways. So what we do is we find out something you might be having a little bit of a struggle with, and we get that connection because we meet with you and we speak with you. So if you haven't met me and you're in any of the services in the South East, please invite me in. I'll come and talk about what you're doing, and I'll be able to hook you up with another service that perhaps has already cracked that nut, gone and looked at that in a little bit more detail, save you a whole lot of heartache and a whole lot of time to help you build together better services. So we've got services, it's a bit like a load of toddlers, to be honest. You've got some really walk in really early, others are on solids, some have cut their first tooth, but you're all developing in slightly different ways, and you're all doing something a little bit better than each other in one area. And what I try to do, and my colleagues try to do in the implementation team, is link the service is doing a little bit better than you in that area that you need the help in. So, yeah, that's what we try and do. And we feed it all back in, and then we help the NFCC develop stuff you need.
Look, I think the HMI described that slightly differently. but nevertheless, Nick, I think we get the point. And I suppose, the whole panel, we talk about kind of courage and leadership. The fact that we've got people join the stage, pretty much unannounced is courageous. So I'm kind of going to follow their lead, right? I'm going to introduce something into the conversation now, which is, you can take or leave the view, right, about whether it's good or bad, but I'm going to see how the panel responds to the next question. And Sonia, unfortunately, it's coming your way, but it'll come to the other people, the members of the panel in a second. Is banter good or bad?
Do you want a long answer or a short answer, Phil, to this one? So, hello everyone, I'm Sonia Paulson. I'm the Director of People and Culture at West Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service. There is something real about banter, a serious hard edge to banter. And Phil and I were just chatting earlier, and did anyone go to the AFSA conference earlier this year? No, that's good then. So earlier this year, I collaborated on some research. It was into the use and abuse of dark humour. I won't go too much in detail because I'm straying off the question. And humour isn't necessarily banter. Dark humour is something that's used in kind of for taboo subjects, for death, serious subjects, versus general humour, which is the kind of banter that we use every day. And there's a place for both. In fact, humans, animals, you know, it's kind of a bedrock of everything that we do as people, as animals, you know. Humour makes the world go round. But on a serious note, I think there is space. There's space for dark humour as well. And the research that I carried out with I'm an occupational psychologist, I should say also, with another psychologist. We were looking specifically into the use of dark humour in an emergency responder context. So I surveyed people, operational colleagues in West Yorkshire, and we also surveyed colleagues, police colleagues in Hampshire and Thames Valley. And we had some great findings, but there is a real correlation actually between the use of dark humour and well-being. So you can think about a negative point of dark humour around misconduct, which we you know, it's been in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons, I guess. And I wanted to put the spotlight on dark humour for all the right reasons, and this real evidential base that dark humour does correlate with well-being and responding and recovering from traumatic situations. So I could talk about this all day long, but the purpose of this research really was a starting point to say, actually, there's a lot of confusion right now. People don't know what's okay and not okay to say sometimes. I mean, it's never okay, I should say, to use banter or make fun of protected characteristics, personal characteristics. That's not okay. That's never acceptable. But that's not what dark humour is. So if you want to know more about the research, I'm very happy if you want to talk to me the rest of the conference or this evening. But yes, I think in answer to the question, there's definitely a space. But what we need to do is help put some guardrails around the use of humour, provide guidance, normalise the use of humour, appropriate humour, and when it isn't okay. And the research was really fascinating, actually. Some good differences between fire and police, but some commonalities. And it links back to trust, actually, and people feeling, only feeling able to use dark humour with trusted colleagues.
Yeah, look, and I'm conscious that, you know, we've scratched the surface there of something which is quite deep, particularly in relation to the use of dark humour and Sonia's research, and I'm not sure we're going to do that justice, really, in this particular space, particularly as I've been given the fact that I've got 4 minutes left, and I've opened up a huge can of worms there in asking that kind of question in the first instance. But I suppose you kind of come back to language and language being important and humour being important in relation to the roles that everyone in this fire and rescue service, you know, it's creating relationships, and it's how you strengthen relationships through humour. And banter has been kind of past that humour perspective. But I suppose the adage is, you know, when that's not landed, particularly when someone says, well, no, it was just banter. And you know, my kind of response to people who say, no, that was just banter is, you know, well, it wasn't, was it? Because if you have to explain yourself saying it's just banter, it isn't banter. But John, I'll come back to you probably for almost the last word, maybe. But what's your perspective on humour and the power of humour, relationship building, but also banter and how banter strays beyond its original definition into kind of bullying, harassment, and inappropriate behaviour?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a key question. There's two words in the English language which I wish I could take out. One is woke, and the other one is banter, because no one can ever really tell me what it actually means. And my issue with banter has always been that it's usually cover for something else. Because there's never been a watch that I've served on, or there's never been a group that I've been part of, whether it's a rugby team, cricket team, or on a watch, where there's not been plenty of laughing, plenty of joking, you know, people coming to work and having fun. That's all great. You know, we never ever want to lose that. You know, one of the things that I often get challenged on, less so now, but certainly a few years ago, was that, we're going to take away all the fun of the job. This is what makes the job what it is. We're able to sit around the mess table and have a joke at each other's expense. You know, it's just banter. But then when you really actually start to peel away at that, what it actually is just cover for bullying. Because normally my experience has been that when people regard something as banter, there's a power dynamic going on. Because guess who's on the other side of it? Guess who's the victim of that so-called banter? It's not the alpha male on that watch, that's for sure. Very, very rare, or very, very rarely. So it's my issue with the word is that it's often just used for cover for something else, and I think we just have to move away from that. That does not mean that when people come to work, you can't actually just enjoy the company of fellow human beings, and we all come with our foibles, we all come with our differences, and that's great. And a bit of good old-fashioned Mickey taking and, being able to actually just laugh at each other and laugh at ourselves, I think is absolutely critical. It's what makes the fire service what it is. But I think I have very little track with people now saying that they don't, well, where's the line? And they say, well, where's the line? What can I say? What can't I say? I just don't believe that. I think now sometimes there can be innocent mistakes made where a particular word is used or some language is used that actually may be outdated, or it was acceptable 5 years ago, it isn't now. So there's some sympathy with that, and that needs to be dealt with in the right way. But 9 times out of 10, most people know exactly where the line is. They know exactly what they're doing, and if they're disguising it by saying it where it's just banter, it was only a laugh, actually it's not. It's bullying, it's harassment, it's in its worst case, it's discrimination, it's making people's lives a misery, whether it's on a fire station in control or in one of our FRS teams. So we have to move away. I just think we have to move away from the use of that word because, one, no one can really ever tell me what it means because I don't understand the difference. And when you do actually get under the skin of it all, actually it's just cover for something much more sinister. And I think we just need to move away, accept the fact that we're all human beings. We can come to work, we can enjoy ourselves, we can take the mick out of each other, that's all fine. We know where the line is. And I think once we start crossing that line, then we're into a different territory, and let's not try and hide behind a word like banter or anything else, because it's just nonsense in my view. And I think the more we say that, the better.
I'm so glad I asked the question. Okay, well, I am conscious that time is up, but if you just pass the microphone to David, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run down the collective. I'll ask you one question. But I'm going to ask you 2, so it's going to go up and then back down again. So the first question being, humour, good or bad? Only one answer is required. Humour, good or bad?
Humour's good.
Okay, pass on.
Humour is absolutely good.
I have a caveat. Yeah, humour is good as long as it doesn't undermine the psychological safety of those involved.
I think everyone knows my answer, but good.
Good, but based on intent.
Good. Laughter's really, really good for you.
Okay.
We know it's good for you.
We'll hold the mic, Nick, and we'll send it back the other way then. So, banter, good or bad?
For me, at the moment, unless we're staying in humour, it's bad, because I appreciate the need for black humour, but it's still humour for me.
I'd err on the side of bad, just simply based on intent. It's all about the intent.
Phil wants one-word answers, and we're not giving one-word answers. I
don't want them. Someone else was.
It depends on the purest definition. So I talk about humour, general and dark. That is different to banter, but I guess it really depends on how we actually define banter, because it doesn't necessarily always mean that it's a hide for something else. But I think if it's inappropriate, discriminatory, disrespectful, then it's bad.
Yes. For a one-word answer, I would say bad, based upon the misuse of the expression over the recent years.
Yeah, that's absolutely where I am. So humour, yes. Banter, no.
And I'm no different to anyone else. I think humour is great and it's essential in the workplace, and negative banter is not welcome.
Okay. Look, I think the time is up for the 30 minutes, and look, I went straight in from as you build kind of trust and confidence, I just went straight in for the kill in the nicest possible way, just to surface a kind of a conversation that's probably happening on every fire station and every functional area. This kind of we can't say anything. I can't have a view. This is managerially we're stifled from having some funny, humorous kind of conversations and taking a little bit of I can't say the word I was going to use, so I'll have to find something. Just enjoying each other's company as much as anything else, because other people control that narrative sometimes, and it's important that we control the narrative, not others. So humour and enjoying each other's company, absolutely. Banter, maybe, but if you are straying into it's just banter, then it isn't. Okay, so look, very grateful for the panel. What I've also done by having another 3 people to the panel is now we're struggling for candles.
You're getting the bill.
Yeah, in fairness, the candle I was going to get, I'm not getting any more. Right? So there you go. My candle's gone to David.
I'm only here for the candle, I'm going to be honest. So.
Look,
I'm not leaving until I've got a candle.
okay, panel, you thanks very much for your time, and especially those people who've come up independently.